Me group.
Hi,
Welcome to
folks.
the 7 o'clock COVID-19 Cobra Q&A, and me, Ro, Dr. Ro here, have a special today for you. I'm just making sure I've got the questions up on my phone and make sure we are officially streaming live. Yes, we are. All right, let's get the sound down. Let's see who's joining us. So I think we'll give it a couple of minutes, Ro, because we would have flashed up on the screen.
I'm just going to take my jumper off. Bear with me, everybody, while I strip in front of you.
All right, we just pop in the comments. Hi, all. Just give us a couple of thumbs up. Let us know you're here. We're going to hold on for 1 or 2 minutes just whilst we start before we kick off. Awesome, Ro. The numbers are growing.
Okay. I can't see anything, so I'm kind of in your hands a little bit.
That's cool. So I'll be controlling the questions, but we'll explain how we're doing today's Q&A in a moment.
I've got lots of notes I've made as well. I'm sure we can add as much as we can tonight.
I think once we hit about 40-ish people, we'll kick off. But we'll give them a couple minutes to get on board.
For those of you watching now, it would be quite useful if you've got pen and paper, because although this is a discussion stroke Q&A, there is actually, I've got a couple of pages of a structured approach here that I'd like to go through with everybody, because I suspect that as the time unfolds over the coming months, some of these will be quite useful tools.
Exactly. So I've got a notepad and pen as well, because there'll be things I'm hearing for the first time, which I'll be scribbling down notes on the side also.
I feel free to be a voice of question on that one, Hans, if you want to throw something back at me.
Yeah, I will do. I'll be firing questions at you. And any question you have for Ro as well, fire them in the comments. Say hello to us, fire them in the comments. We've now got 65 people online. 69. I think we'll give it another 30 seconds or so, and that will allow everybody to get on so they don't miss the start.
So reminders, pen, paper, questions you might have.
Absolutely. So ready to start, Ro?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's go. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got about 45 minutes to an hour with you amazing people. And the question and the focus of today is going to be managing current circumstances on a personal level amidst everything that's going on. Your emotional state, how do we manage your emotional state? How do we deal with the internal reactions that we're having from the news, from the media, from our letting agents, from whoever's coming at us? I say letting agents because I've had a few run-ins with my lettings agents in the last week or so. And if we have time, managing time, we'll cover that at the end if we have time. If not, we'll roll that over into next week. So that's where the focus is going to be. And if some of you have been listening to the Growth Tribes podcast, we wanted to share tonight's webinar in the same kind of style, similar style, where you've got a younger voice, a property investor who's been investing for a shorter period of time. And then you've got a wiser, more mature voice, older voice in Dr. Ro here, who's been investing for a longer period of time now, I believe 19 years. Yeah. So that's the kind of style we're going to have. We're going to bounce back and forth. And Ro's got a really exciting 3-step process for you, which I put into the post today. So Dr. Ro, if you don't know who he is, I'll introduce you, Ro. And although Dr. Ro has been investing for 19 years now in property, we could have fired him a whole bunch of property technical questions, which is great. But I'm also conscious of the fact that we've got amazing mentors who've already come on, mentors, advanced trainers, speakers who have already hosted some of these live streams to the group, and they've been handling your technical property expertise. Whereas in addition to those questions, Ro has, we can leverage Ro's skills. He's been an interventional coach for 30 years now, to one-on-one on a one-on-one level, and to thousands of people in front of audiences. And many of you have seen that, whether you've come to Turning Point, Communicating with Impact, and any other things that was run in the background, you would have known this about him in terms of his interventional skill set and his ability to coach people one-on-one and on a group level. He's also shared the stage with phenomenal people such as Les Brown, Richard Branson, Robert Kiyosaki. So it's amazing to have him here. So Ro, Say hi to the Asset Academy audience. They know who you are, but just a general hi.
Hi, folks. If you don't know me, then it's nice to meet you. And if you do, it's good to see you again. Obviously, difficult times at the moment. Whilst we're at it, before we get into the flow of it, those of you that don't know Harminder, and you might have seen his bearded face, whether it's on our podcast that we've been doing. It's quite nice to do this live, actually. Normally we're doing it recording, aren't we? I mean, I met you, gosh, 5 years ago, was it? Now, 4 or 5 years ago. So you came through, you were in an audience, I think it was at the Millennium Gloucester Hotel, 3-day basic training with his wife to be at the time. Very passionate, very committed, was one of the first people to register. I think that resulted in you and I having a one-to-one or some sort of coaching session, I seem to remember. But Harminder's accelerated his business very quickly. And in the process of getting out of his job, which I think he did after a couple of years, he then started to expand and develop online businesses, and actually is extremely specialized and actually works closely with Asset Academy on social media, online business, has clients even down to people in Harley Street who work with him on that level. So part of me wanted, although he wanted to do an interview with me, I wanted to actually use Harminder in this particular session because of his skill set and his youthfulness, in the sense that he's got a different eye on the game than I have. So we see things differently, and this is why we've been able to bounce off each other a lot. So I may at times during the course of this session today, Harms, just reflect back and ask you questions through your eyes as an experienced property investor, but also from the youthful eyes of a millennial watching social media and how you're reading it and what vibe you're picking up, because you hear different things to me, if that's all right.
Absolutely. So just a bit of feedback from the audience. Can you, and thanks for the introduction, Ro, can you turn your gain up? Can you turn your volume up on your mic?
Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay, so
they're saying you're quite...
Two, testing. Let me see if I can get it up here. Is that better?
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Probably a bit higher.
That's on maximum there.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll just speak loudly. I'll shout if I have to. Can you hear me?
That's fine. I mean, I can hear you nice and clear. Give us a bit of feedback. Those who are now listening, Rose turned his volume up on his side.
Hello, testing. 1, 2, 3.
If not, what I will do is I will turn my gain down so you guys can turn the volume up on your laptop. So we'll do it that way. If not, so keep feeding back to us.
I'll just speak loudly as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I'll just turn your volume up and I'll turn my gain down. I think Rose at his max mic level. Okay, so the way we want to structure today is just like how we were doing the Growth Tribe podcast, is do it in a coaching manner. And we're going to split this podcast, I call it a podcast, it's live stream, 50%, 25 minutes to 30 minutes. We're going to be focusing on a process which we can use to manage the anxiety and manage the current situation on a personal level. That's your emotional state, your time, dealing with your reaction to what's happening around us. So that's what we're going to do. So the first part is going to be us talking to you, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A for the second part, which will be 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we'll close off at a reasonable time, and once we've answered the majority of questions. So that's how we want to run today. 2 parts to today's live stream, and that's where we are. So refocusing again, try to put the questions forward to us, which are in the following areas: managing your current circumstances on a personal level, managing your current circumstances regarding your emotional state with what's happening at the moment. You can fire us time management questions, no problem whatsoever, and also dealing with your reactions to what's happening. You're seeing something and you're struggling to handle the way you're reacting to this. So keep the questions focused on there, but by all means, if there's some burning property questions, do fire them at us. That would be great also. So that's how we're going to do it, 2 halves. Now, Ro, the current situation out there is unprecedented. So it's not, surprising. And I've felt this myself personally, that, we're almost all going on a roller coaster of an emotional reaction. There's highs, there's lows, there's us waking up in the morning questioning what the hell is going on, and everything that we thought was happening in the world, including our aspirations. So for example, this year, or in this quarter of business, I wanted to buy 2, 3, 4 houses, or I wanted to view 40 houses. All of these expectations we set for them ourselves has suddenly been wiped out clean. So this is really affecting everybody on an emotional level. So, and everything's being magnified by the fact that we've got this partial lockdown. So that's where we want to focus. So Ro, over to you. How would you want to start this conversation about what's happening?
A call that's coming in, and it keeps coming in. It seems to be urgent. Can you hold the space just for a moment? Apologies on this one.
Okay, so I'm just checking the questions. You can hear Ro's kids in the back. When are you coming home? Bless. So he's done this. So we've jumped on this literally last minute with Ro. We gave Ro a couple of days notice. Say, can you please do this? So he's coming back in a moment. And I think where he's going to go with this is focusing on a starting point for us. So let me just unmute him here.
Daughter and with family, yeah. You have to
Hi, Ro. Yeah. So as you left the conversation, we heard. I think it was Savannah. Ro, when are you coming home? And it was.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. So you can see everything's changing. That was actually what I was going to say. I mean, the landscape around us is changing dramatically, as we just saw there. You're right. We're in unprecedented times. We're in uncharted water right now. And without a doubt, I think anyone watching this says categorically they're not phased at all in any way, shape or form by what's happening will be lying to you. And that includes myself.
Yeah.
Because the impact it has, not just us on now, but us in the near 6, 12, 18, 24 months, without a doubt, it's going to have an impact on all of us, both on a personal level, the families that we have close to us. Some of you may have experienced that already, but even just on a community level as well, how companies will operate differently, how the corporate structure will work, the whole industries are changing around us. The reality is that we all need roofs over our heads. And so as property investors, as landlords, there are, without a doubt, there are long-term benefits to staying in this profession, and that's the one benefit that we do have. How we navigate through that, we have to sort of do that carefully, and we're going to have to be guided a little bit by what's happening in the outside world. So from my perspective, I've been very blessed over these years to work so closely with people that I've taken people from right on the edge of literally near suicide and brought them back to others that had financial meltdown, emotional meltdown, relationship breakups. And there's a typical behavioral pattern that happens when we get into a place of anxiety. So if you're feeling that right now, first of all, don't beat yourself up, don't feel upset about it, and certainly don't feel that you are on your own, because you're not. And that's an important part. And if you're brand new to Asset Academy, you're just coming through this, you're thinking, oh my God, I've just started this journey, what happens next? Everything's going to be fine, but you're going to have to navigate through it with a different set of tools to you might have had to have done 12, 18, 24 months ago had you come through then. If you're watching this and you've got an existing portfolio and maybe you've just left your job, or you're thinking about leaving your job, or you've possibly been around for a while, you may have a different set of circumstances that have come upon you. You might have children, you might have parents that are sick, you might be in a job, possibly even have lost your job. So there's no one simple formula to any of this, but there are certain methods and ways that we can tackle it. So as we go through this, what I'd really appreciate if you do is if you can capture what I'm going to go through with you and write it down. I'll give you an approach. It's not a definitive approach, there's variations on it, but it gives you something that you can take a deep breath with and say, okay, so if I just take back what Dr. Rose did and just break that down, the idea is to compartmentalize what's going on in our heads, because the truth is we get to a fucking point where our brain wants to explode. Like, for example, the phone rang the first time I looked. I thought, okay, put it down, didn't think it looked urgent. And it came again, it kept going. And there's a point when we need to respond. So that's what's happening in all our lives at the moment. Stuff is coming at us from left, right, and center, whether it's tenants, whether it's letting agents, whether it's the banks. I've got a couple of properties that are going through at the moment, purchasing. We've got another couple that are selling. Everything's grinding to a halt at the moment. Solicitors are having to change the way they do their business. And we're at this side saying, I want to just push, push, push. But the universe is just pushing back a little bit and saying, okay, you're going to have to dance with me a bit. And part of this process is learning to language our situation differently. Maybe we can come back to that. I'm going to make a note of that actually, Harminder.
Okay.
That's something that we could possibly tackle a bit later on at this time, is the language and the words that we're using when we're going through this. That wasn't what I was going to cover, but it's just coming into my brain as we speak now.
Yeah, and as you're speaking, I've logged the questions. There's already a load of questions coming in, so we've got to keep some time for that.
Okay, good. So let me just have a look, because I've got specific notes that I had here. So before I hand you back to Harminder, I think he's going to ask a question, I believe, if I'm right.
Yeah. So the question. Okay. Sorry. Go. Yeah.
Okay. So Let's take the questions first, because I want
Okay.
to keep a secret to this.
Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of questions, but I want to ask the audience listening now, and the big question we want to get to understand where everybody is. And trust me, I would be firing down words when I say this as well, which is, how are you feeling at this moment? So the questions that are coming are fantastic, and I've logged those. But throw some honest words down. Just a phrase, it could be a sentence, it could be one word. How are you feeling at the moment? And that's where we want to start this, because if we can collate these words as a group, we can then plug this into the system Ro's going to be covering in a moment. So just fire some words down.
I mean, while you're doing that, I'm just checking the back of my notes, because there's certain things I want to cover with you as well. So when we went through the last recession, 2007, 8, 9, 10, I just remember a lot that was going on at the time for me. We just had a baby girl as well. So Savannah, who just rang me there, she, you know, as a parent, there was a lot of, yes, we had our portfolio, interest rates were in a completely different place at the time. And I remember a lot of fear going on about, well, what's going to happen next? What if this? And I started going through, I went for a short momentary period of what if, what if, what if, what if, what if. So if you've got those going on, that's fine. That's not an unusual behavior pattern, depending on where you are in your emotional development and the tools that you've got around you. And I found that being a parent made me feel more vulnerable than, say, someone that's single at the moment, or someone that hasn't got kids, which might be Harminder at the moment.
At the moment, but if
I don't know how much you want to
would,
share with the audience, by the way.
well, okay. So as an example, so this is private to this group. We have not shared this outside this group.
How many people are watching this?
But to show you as an example, you know, and I think one of the things, the message I'll get across a bit later is, you know, we're in the midst of this, and we're midway during pregnancy. So my beautiful wife Gina's pregnant, so we're midway through that. Now, at this time, you know, we should be going to midwife appointments. She should be going to baby yoga classes, or whatever these amazing things are out there. And all of that is on pause, and it's completely stopped. Now we've got a child coming, just as we was ramping business up, ready to have the child and allowed to step out of work. So all of this has scuppered those plans that we had in place. So that's, you know, this is an example of my scenario, which I will tie in a bit later, because I think there's a powerful message here. We can talk about that a bit later. So Ro, can I loop back to the kind of words that are coming out? And this is fair? Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so to answer that question that we framed, and it's actually the stuff we had as well, which is anxious, lonely, nervous, overwhelmed, frustrated, and thank you all for the honesty. It's incredible. Worried, anxious, fear for the future, frustrated, overwhelmed, come up again, under pressure, confused, still anxious, scared about health of myself and family, anxious but pushing to be positive, emotional roller coaster, scared, frustrated, somebody said responsible for others. Exactly, that's linked to the scenario I just gave you. Relatively calm, so somebody's got relatively calm, need to help community.
Good. Anxious,
isolated, definitely overwhelmed, helpless. Mine was uncertainty, apprehensive, and then a few congratulations.
Oh yeah, that's nice. Pissed off with husband.
So those are the words.
Pissed off with husband.
Pissed off with husband.
That's brilliant.
Already, we're like day 3 or 4 or something.
I'm just trying. So what I'm doing is, and this will come out a little bit later on, I'm trying to categorize these, because part of the issue with any type of concern, anxiety, pressure, stress, whatever, is a lot of it is because, I mean, you know, I'm just scribbling away here, is it feels like a bowl of spaghetti in our heads. And so that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you then start having a dialogue between different parts of your brain. There's the personal side. I've written down family and parenting there. I've written down business. Then there's just simply isolation, which is more of a private thing. Then there's overwhelm. And all these things having a conversation. And that's challenging, because at the moment, it just looks like there's a lot of stuff going on in there. My can I just jump in for a minute?
Please.
So my main concern, I guess the question that both Harms and I want to throw at you is, what are the consequences if you allow this level of anxiety to kick in? Because over the years, I've seen it from extreme cases of people semi-suicidal, trying to do stupid things to themselves, complete disconnection, relationship breakups with husbands, um, rifts forming between parents and kids. Because I mean, if you're watching this and you're in a financial challenge situation, then there's this insular feeling of you don't fucking understand. I'm in a bad position here. You might think you're in a bad position, but look at what's going on in my head, and there's this whole list of stuff, it's just kicking around in our heads. So even though somebody might be talking to us, a husband or a wife or a child or a parent, we don't hear that because it's just this constant discussion that's going on in our heads. If anybody relates to this, just say yes, because this is very, very common under any situation like this where there's overwhelm. Moving house is stressful. Having kids is stressful. Changing jobs is stressful. Buying a house is stressful. Losing your job is stressful. All of that's happening. All of it, plus an economic meltdown. And so it's absolutely no surprise that people are getting these feelings at the moment. And I don't think we should hide them. We shouldn't sweep them under the table.
Yeah.
Bullshit. We have to challenge them and we have to face them head on. So, I mean,
because if we don't handle these, and so looking at the people you've coached in the background, and I've seen this with my own eyes, and I think somebody has posted it now, but I'll share it in a moment. If you don't handle these, what are the consequences typically that you see?
Okay, so first of all, the high stress levels will, without a doubt, impact your immune system. So when the neural pathways in your brain and your whole nervous system gets overwhelmed, one of the things that gets affected is your adrenal gland. Another one is your sleep patterns. Now you combine those together and you got yourself a casserole of poison there that will stop your body resting, which means your immune system drops. And when your immune system drops, you become susceptible to illness, which is exactly what's been happening to a lot of people who I mean, look, statistically, they're saying 60-70% of us are going to get it. Viruses work their way through a tribe, a community, a culture, whatever. History has shown that. The ones that survive are the ones that have the strongest immune systems. And unfortunately, we are in a much more stressful environment today than we ever were. If you go back to my mum's period, they had the war. So every person I met who's over 60, 65, 70 that I've spoken to, they're handling this totally differently. Where we're staying at the moment, there's a lady who's probably 60, 65 years of age, calm. Just spoke to a gentleman today, 80 years of age, calm. They've been there. There's just a different level of temperament. Whereas we're seeing a different reaction for different people, and that's the challenge we've got at the moment. Is if you allow yourself to get overstressed, you're going to get sick. And I'm not here to give you medical advice, but we know that from. I mean, I do a lot of stuff with health. I used to run health seminars, and we're actually, you and I are working on, for those of you interested, myself and Harminder are doing an interview towards the end of the week with two of the top specialists in human physiology and health. They, in fact, nutrition. They advise the government, and they've kindly agreed to do an interview with myself and Harminder. And I've also managed to persuade a Harley Street doctor who's used to be on TV to do the same thing with us, hopefully next week. So those things are going to come out, and I think that's the message we've got to get across to all of you. Is you've really got to manage both your emotional and your physical state, because if you allow your immune system to get low, if you get sick and you're protecting your kids, who's going to look after the kids? So I mean, not to put too much of pressure on you, leverage, but part of change in life is learning to understand the consequences of that. So it's quite good that you've asked that question, Harms. But other things include mood swings, so rattiness, irrational behavior, frustration, anger, tension building up at the house. We're all being forced into our homes right now. And it's not that we don't want to do that, because we spend our time getting financially free so we can spend more time at home or doing the things we want to do. And so, if anything you've written down here on the right-hand side or whatever's coming in to Harminder is, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be at home more than often. Please don't let that put you off if you're on the path to financial freedom.
Yeah, because what one of the questions is how to cope, and these are amazing questions, how to cope with self-isolation. They either live alone or they have a roommate. So, one of the questions is that, now we're pursuing this financial independence, financial freedom, and now we've been told, hang on a minute, stay at home.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, when you're financially independent or secure, whatever word you want to use around it, whether you fully, partially, there will be times when you just hang out at home. And I've done that with my kids. This is slightly different because everyone's in the same space. You can't go out and pursue the things you want to pursue. So there are certain restrictions on us, of course. But the fact is that anything compressed into a small space, this is physics, has a natural propensity to explode or want to explode out. Take an atom bomb's created by pushing them into a tiny space and then bang, explodes out. You put people into a room, 50, 60, 100, I've done it with thousands in a room, and you get the energy up, they just want to explode outward. Now you're going into a home space and you're going to be there. So that's going to lead to tension. There's going to be also relationship challenges. This is the one time, and this is one of my big concerns at the moment, is that relationships will go one of two ways. One way is they get stronger. So I spoke to a gentleman today, 75, 80 years of age, with his wife, relaxing. He said, you know what, we're just going to spend time together. We've got a garden, and they've been together a long time. But I've also spoken to somebody 2 days ago who said, you know, there's more and more tension building up. There's a financial stress going on. We're having more arguments than we had in the last year, and that's in the last week. And back in 2008, 2009, I did an interview with the Guardian, the BBC Midlands it was, and they were asking questions about relationships and money. And actually, there are statistics to show that when there's a recession, a lot of couples break up. So we've got to find a way. And I say we, you know, as a culture, as a supportive family, whether it's this family here, the Asset Academy, or your own families, to support those around you that might be having those kind of challenges. And it's not that you don't love each other, but you may have a different set of values, and also you may have a different set of coping mechanisms on how you deal with this type of situation. And it's not that one person's right or wrong, because you can't be having those conversations right now, because that's just going to create a bigger conflict. You have to find a way to dance together. Think of this as a dance. You've gone from a slow waltz where you've been rhythmically moving through the last 6, 12 months, 18 months, with the occasional out of step feeling when things have gone a little bit rocky, to now we're in like a bloody tango or something where we're just going at it and everything's going all over the place. So try and see this, and I know I've gone into relationships, but actually this is quite an important part. Try and see this as an opportunity to change the way you communicate with your partner, and try not to be critical. And I'm having the same conversations at home. You know, it comes up, everyone has these high volume discussions, and unfortunately that's just part of where we're at. You notice I say high volume.
I laugh because Ro's version of a argument or a loud discussion is a high volume argument, a high volume discussion, and I always find it funny. So Ro, can we now move on to and I think you framed it importantly there, because relationships is the key here. So again, I've got a whole bunch of questions, and I'm hoping these questions will automatically get answered as we go through this process, because I'm hoping we've got two processes. Number one, we'll cover in a moment, and number two, hopefully these will get handled within here. And then those that haven't, we can then pick up an answer, and I will go through the list at the end.
All right. Well, look,
so
it's quite a logical process. So I don't know, because I'm not seeing all the questions. So let's see how we get on, and then we can talk into that space afterwards. So first things first, I'd like everyone to write this down. Just you have to start to learn to manage your environment differently. When I wrote the Turning Point book that came out in 2011, one of the chapters in the book was environment. And for a lot of people, in the six-step process that I took people through when we first started this whole process, was learning to manage your environment. So that includes, and I'll give you some things to consider here. Who are you listening to? Who are you taking information from? Who is feeding that anxiety, feeding that stress? Because there will be a mechanism or people that do that. So I've written down a few examples here on my piece of paper next to me on the screen here. So friends, I'm just giving you things to write down. Friend, and just write this down to start with, because you're going to have to contemplate this. When I go through this process with you, there won't be time to dig into the depth of it. We can pull it up and talk about it in the Q&A section. But just write stuff down now and allow yourself to process it. This is a learning period. You know, we've got weeks ahead of us, so you might as well try and take some of these tools and use them. So friends, family. I wrote down earlier on newspapers, news articles, radio, TV. You're getting your environment is everything that's inside you and everything that's outside of you. So think of it as two environments. If I was to draw this very quickly, two circles. Is that clear there? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so the middle circle is you. That's one environment that you have a high level of control over. This environment out here, you don't have such a high level of control over, because it's coming at you like this, and this is what's causing a lot of people challenges. So what we can do is we can create a filter on that inner circle. How do we filter the information coming into you so that you can then choose to give it a different meaning? And a classic quote from Tony Robbins is, nothing has meaning apart from the meaning that you give it. So every situation that we're facing at the moment, you know, we've got people online, we've got Tracy Carter Ward, we've got Helen Lodge, we've got people I know for many years. They've been around the game a lot longer. they might see a situation, handle it slightly differently because they're more experienced as a property investor, for example, or just life. You're talking about life. And then if you're brand new to this, your filter might be very different. Your filter might have bigger holes in it because right now you're just absorbing everything. Whereas myself, I look at stuff with a very, very, very fine filter. And that's not to be, it's not about ego or anything like that. Just over the years, I've learned if I allow everything in, it will get to me. And that doesn't matter who you are. And I've worked at a very high level with all sorts of people. And I've had my really low places where I just didn't want to be there. And I remember at the time feeling so vulnerable. But the one thing I did when I was in those places, even when I went through my divorce, when my mum got cancer, my career just literally came crashing down around me because I lost passion for it. Even by that time, I got to a stage in my life where I was very cautious about what I filtered. It's happening right now around us. And most of you know, this thing here, holy shit, this is fucking dangerous. It's a great tool, but you only have to open up WhatsApp. If I do it now, and it's just information. And of course, people are sending you videos. One is a happy one is a absolutely, oh my God, that's just, I need to watch this. So we're getting information from everywhere. Unless you start to change that filter, take off the glasses, put a different pair of glasses on, whatever I give you next won't really help because the tools are only beneficial if you are emotionally developed enough to filter things out. Of course, the last one is social media. I'm going to hand over to Harms on that one because this is your territory, not mine. I think if I'm really honest, Harms, back in the day, we wouldn't have had as much information overload. My phone today, in the last 24 hours, has given me more information than I would have had even in the last recession, or 20 years ago when we had a recession back in whatever it was, 1990 or whatever it was. So we got information from newspapers, radio, and the TV back then. So we would wait and we would watch, and it would come to us in dribs and drabs all the time, all the freaking time now. So over to you. What are you seeing as a millennial?
Yeah, so if you take that example there, Ro, is okay. So when Boris Johnson does an announcement on a daily basis, that comes to us live. Phenomenal. So we all get access to this no matter where we are. It comes to us live. Now, the challenge, which is different to your era, is the moment that hits us, we now disseminate that information everywhere. And now if you think about Chinese whispers, it changes and I'm culprit for this as well. Oh, I think they mean this. I think they mean this. And I sent Ro a few messages yesterday. Oh, no, I think they mean this. That then gets passed on, and then that person passes it on, and then that person passes it on, and the information becomes and acts like a virus. And it just came to mind. I don't want to use that term, but it acts like a virus, the way it exponentially grows and gets fed down the path. Well, the more that we pass that message on, the more extreme it becomes, and the more we believe it. And I think that's a big, powerful thing. So I think to manage that, I just want to go quickly into the solutions. There's two ways: a logical way to process this, and an emotional. The logical is just really understand the news and take it for what it is, as close to the source as possible. Yeah. So just understand the media machine is built in the way to get your clicks and drive traffic. The more we click, the more we feed that machine, the more data we give them. So I think at a time like this, just choose your one or two information sources, and the gov.uk website would be one of them at a time like this. And just take the information from the source, and that's it. I would say try not to get sucked into the media companies that then relay this information and just take a quote, maybe one phrase that Boris Johnson said, and dissect it and then create all these additional promises into the world. So something at the moment is a self-employed part. Now, is there going to be any relief for self-employed people? The fact is we don't know, but the rumor machine has started to pull quotes and information to allow us to believe there is. So we'll have to understand what's happening there. So I think on the logical solution is really simply just go to the source. Of course, listen to your friends, etc. And there'll be people here listening to myself in a WhatsApp group. Just take it as it is, but try get to the source as close as possible. Take a scientific approach. Just ask yourself the question. It's a good question to write down. Is what I am reading sounding credible? Is it coming from a credible source? This is the way the scientists will sort of decode information. Yeah. And I think, well, on the emotional side, for those listening at home as well, is it can be really frustrating to see somebody else's post or somebody else's opinion on something, which is a polar opposite to what we feel, and get extremely frustrated and react to that. But what I'd say is that piece of information you see is just a snapshot in time on what they are experiencing or what they are sharing with the world. So from an emotional level, I'm sure we'll hopefully tie this up at the end.
I can, yeah.
Is just, I guess, we'll just have compassion for their circumstance, because I think one of the challenges we have right now is it's very easy for us to say, oh my God, all of these people, and with explicit words, are raiding the shopping centers. They're out there socializing, but we've got to understand where they are in their mindset, where they are in terms of what has happened in their life for them to feel like they need to hoard, they need to raid the shops. So I think if we approach this from a place of compassion and try to understand their perspective rather than attack them, we may be able to get a better educated message over to them.
I think that's
So
good. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I can pick that up actually in this process.
yeah, so social media, credible source, logical. Number two is understand from an emotional point of view. That's a snapshot in time. That's it, and just show compassion for the other person. So that's social media, Ro, in a nutshell. Where
you used an unfortunate term. You used Chinese whispers there, which is ironic in the circumstance. You talked about virus in the same sentence, but it just shows you how language is translated into how things get communicated now in modern day.
Absolutely.
I think the other thing I want to say before I get into this, because I want to go through these before we open up to questions, is try. It's difficult for me to say this because we're all in different situations. I mean, we're literally in transit at the moment. We're supposed to move back into a house, but the builders can't finish the work, it looks like. So we're literally in limbo, supposed to leave a place in 5 days' time. So officially I haven't got anywhere to live in about 6 or 7 days' time. So everyone's got situations, and I can start getting angry and pointing the finger. And if we allow ourselves to be a victim, that doesn't really help us go through a way of finding solutions. So if you find yourself going there, be mindful of that, particularly when it comes to pointing fingers or getting angry at other people. And as much as I do think it's important we take responsibility for our situation. This is something that's been put upon us. So what we can take responsibility is how we handle that situation. So let me give you 3 things. And I actually typed this up earlier because I wanted to make sure I gave you a structured approach to it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through it in my mind, which is good, but I can catalog it for you. So you have to write these things down. So it's 3 steps. One is an emotional step. The second one is a logical step. And then the third one is really an action-based process beyond that. So I'm going to break down these in sequence. Let's deal with the emotional step first. Now remember, I'm trying to deal with the idea that you're feeling anxious or possibly overwhelmed. So the first thing to do is, no matter how mad the situation is, take a moment without all the noise, without the phones and everything else, to close your eyes and picture visually. If you're an auditory person, then just hear yourself describing it. If you're kinesthetic and you feel it. Doesn't matter how you do it, but take a moment to actually just imagine what you are seeing. Because at the moment, if you're having a conversation with me, and I had this conversation earlier on with one of our tradesmen, it was literally a 10-minute unload. It was just boom, boom, and it felt like somebody throwing a bowl of spaghetti at me. So you have to breathe, and what breathing does, it gets the oxygen into the blood. It allows you to slow the heart rate down a little bit, and if you do it in the right rhythm, I'm not going to go into that detail now because it's more a meditative process, it gives you a chance to just calm yourself down. And all I want you to do at this stage is just picture it, feel it, hear it, however you process it, and actually start to create in your mind a picture, an image, or whatever you want to frame it. It could be a movie, and this is a form of an NLP technique, but it's just simply getting it into place. I want you to picture all the areas that you're actually feeling anxious about, because at the moment it's just one mass blob in front of you, which is creating this feeling of shit. Fuck, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with this? So that's the first part. How long does that take? However long you want. I mean, I wouldn't imagine it's going to take 30 seconds. I don't think it's going to take an hour, but it might be 5, 7, 10 minutes of just literally allowing you. I'm just going to close my eyes for a minute. Just allowing yourself to just, without all the distractions. I mean, I was looking at the markets today and doing some stuff on the stock market, having a look at that. And my kids were at home. I just said, right, I need to disappear for a bit. So I actually came to the office here, made some phone calls. But before I did anything, I sat down and I just pictured what I needed to deal with, because I knew there was mortgage phone calls to make, there was letting agents to deal with, I had to speak to my accounts manager, I had to speak to my PA and various people in the company. And I said, right, what is the priority? And oddly enough, when I came in, I was thinking, blimey, there's all this stuff to do. But I did the same process, but in a condensed format. It took me about 2 or 3 minutes because it was a small set of actions to do. But in the process of doing that, what it does, it moves you away from the situation. So you are what Deepak Chopra might call a silent witness. You're an observer of the moment, and that's what you need to do in this situation. If you're in the moment, you're drowning in it. If you're an observer of the moment, you can look in and reach in and pull out the person that's drowning, in this case, which is you. So that's the first part. Remember, we're in step one at the moment, emotional. Anything you want? Can I just carry on, Harms? Is that okay?
Keep going on. I'll jump in if I think,
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Yeah.
So the next thing is to, and again, if you can do it in your mind, place each area into its own category. So, I mean, I was writing some of the things that people were shouting down earlier on. So categories such as business. All right, so you've got business. Then there's your property concerns over here. Then you might have your financial concerns over here. If you're a parent, I'm no doubt, if we're parents, so we know what this is like. Okay, how am I going to manage the situation with the kids? Food, family members. But try and pull the spaghetti out so you can start to see these strings leading out to somewhere different. If you don't do that, we're back to square one, which is panic again. Anger, frustration, the whole thing. Oh, leave me alone. Just talk to your husband, your wife. I need to process this. So you've got to separate it into different groupings. So that's the second part of the process. Now, I've actually written this down very specifically. So I've written down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things I'd like you to capture here. And I could have just reeled them off, but I'd like you to write this down. So for each area, remember, this is the emotional start of the process at the moment. So you've gone into here. You might open your eyes and you're crying. You might open your eyes and you're like, you're feeling angry. Or you might open your eyes and you might go, okay, so actually that and that and that I'm feeling a bit better about, but I'm freaking pissed off about that, and I'm seriously worried about this down here. I got a message from a friend of mine today who she just sent me a message. She just said, Ro, I'm scared. She's due to have a baby in 2 days. Her husband's suspected COVID-19. He's now in self-isolation in a completely different building. She has a toddler and no one can get to her. Midwives can't get to her. I mean, what a situation to be in. She literally, and she's got to have a C-section as well. And the hospitals are like, okay, we're going to try and find a way to get a solution for you. Not a good situation to be in. This is in Canada where they're in total lockdown, not like here. So everybody's situation is different, and it's about compartmentalizing that and saying, so I was asking this question, what do I have control over? So write these things down. I'm going to make sure I go into sequence. Number 1, what are you feeling right now? So for each of these areas, let's just break it down. Your property portfolio, what am I feeling right now? Just what am I feeling right now? And you do this for each one. So what am I feeling? If it's family, what am I feeling right now? It's an emotional reaction. Not logical, we'll come to that in a minute. Just capture what you're feeling. This is like taking a pressure cooker and going, when we do this process, I've done this countless times. There are even people watching this now that have been on stage with me at events where I've brought them up to stage and they're about to go bang. And by picking apart the questions, the pressure's come off. And when the pressure comes off, they can breathe again. And when they can breathe again, now they can start to see clearly. There's not so much fog around. And when you can see clearly, you can ask the right questions, you can get the right answers. But at the moment, your head's too full of all the anxiety. So that's the first thing. What are you feeling? Second thing, what are you focusing on? So in that situation, for example, my relationship, it could be relationship anxiety, and I'm feeling frustrated, angry, and I'm really fucking pissed off with my husband or my wife. What are you focusing on? It could be that you're focusing on what they're not doing. It could be focusing on their attitude. It could be that you're focusing on their negativity. I don't know what it is, but you'll be focusing on something. So that's really important. What you're focusing on. Then write down all the thoughts that are firing through your mind. Everything. Every single thought. Absolutely everything. The negative ones, the positive ones, the fearful ones. Sentences. Just get them on paper. In the process of doing this, it's like, I've done this countless times with people over the years, and there is a shift in their persona when they do this, partly because they're getting it onto paper. If you want to describe it like a movie, describe it like a movie, like you're watching it from the outside. If you want to describe it like you're in it, write it like you're in it. It's entirely up to you. There are some techniques we can use, but I'm not going to go through that right now. But for now, just get it down on paper, because in the process of writing on paper, you can go like this. You can have it up close and go, we can go, okay. Yeah, okay, this is how it looks. Because when it gets to the logical part in a moment. Harms, is this making sense? Because I'm talking 100 miles an hour.
That makes sense.
And if I was working through this live with somebody, we could actually do it.
Yeah, and we can ask them the questions, and we could see that transformation. I think if we was to sum this part up, it's taking everything that you're feeling in your head and possibly your heart as well, and getting it down onto paper. Is that fair?
Yes.
Take it from here and getting it down onto paper. All these feelings.
Okay, what that does, when I do time management with people, we call it downloading. So it's slightly different. With time management, you're downloading all the stuff. So you're literally doing this. You're just going, right, fuck, it's on the paper there now. It gives you a chance to step back from it. It gives you a chance to go out, have a scream, come back, grab a glass of water, look at it and go, right. Because now I've got them all laid out in front of me. I've got the relationship that's going on. I've got the kids. I've got my bills. I've got to pay the school, whatever it is. I've got my mortgages. I've got this property over here where the tenants can't pay. I can do that, but you can't do that if it's all in your head. I know I'm talking intensely and it's kind of full on, but and this might sound obvious, but people don't do this. They bottle it up, and then people go, "Oh, you don't understand, doctor." I do, because I'm actually there right now with certain things in my life, and I've been through it myself. And every time I've taken the time to do this, you go. There's a slight sense of, then there's a bigger one, and then you can do the next part, which is a little bit different. My daughter's ringing again. Harms, can you just pick this up for a second? Sorry.
Right. So let me transition us onto the part 2. Well, I'm going to mute him this time. I don't know what Savannah's going to say to him. Dad, why are you not home yet? So that's part 1, which is number 1, emotional. I'm going to update the text now, because we're now going to move on to the logical part. And the first thing, which was, as Ro described, is getting that place down onto paper. And it was quite intentional why we started this series, and we asked you the question, how are you feeling now? Because that should actually help fast track the prompt. Let me unmute him. Sorry. Hey, well, I was just saying, it was quite fortunate that we've asked them at the start of this this video live stream, how are you feeling? Because that should help fast track this first part.
Yeah.
You can take those feelings and put them into what apartment, and then get it down on paper.
Great point. Just on that note, just to add to that then. So what I find is when people do this, they go from a 10 in certain areas to maybe a 7 or a 6. That doesn't mean to say all of it goes away, but it's like, okay, that one I feel more like a 7. That was about a 5 now. That one's still a frigging 10.
Okay, so this is interesting, because you're now talking about scoring things. You didn't mention that previously.
I didn't, no. I have got it written down later on in the logical part, but we can put it in here if you want to. So emotionally, 10 is like, I'm absolutely frigging overwhelmed. I cannot deal with this. 1 is, I'm smoking a cigar. I'm on the beach. Everything's cool, which I'm unlikely to be the case, but at least on the scale. But the problem when you're, especially when coaching somebody live particularly, is I'm asking you see me do it, very specific questions, and I'm watching for breathing patterns, eye dilations, muscle movements around the eyes, anything like that gives me a clue, and that'll tell me whether they're a 10, a 9, a 7, a 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if I work through those areas while I'm talking to them, their face tells me what level I can even tell when they're lying. So by you doing this, you can actually, because everyone thinks it's a 10, because guess what? My relationships in there, which is a 10, as is my money situation, which is a 10, as is I'm not having to go to work, which is kind of a 7, but it's mixed in with a 10. So everything feels like a 10.
Feels like a 10.
Right, when I'm talking about it. So this is getting it out and going, right, let's get it on paper first. That's the first emotion. So
let's now move on to, I'm going to try and get that point. Step 2 in the corner.
Oh, so there, right. Step 2, right. Step 2 is the logical process. So this is about cataloging.
And these have to be done in sequence. Would you recommend they do this in this sequence?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, personally, I think the best way to do it is whilst you're in the pressure cooker mode, do it all. So in other words, do relationship first. So let's say you got 4 categories: relationships, health, finances, and your business. Just dump each of those categories down emotionally first. So it could take you 5-10 minutes to the first one, 5-10 minutes to get all the emotion out first. Because the problem here, and I tried this in my early days as a coach, and this is me experimenting over the years and going backwards and forwards, is I would go, right, let's deal with the relationship and then do the logical bit. And in doing that, I found it quite hard to take them back into the pressure cooker then to get to the other area, because they had now gone to a left brain processing element of oh, great, I've got a solution to this now, but there's other stuff that's bubbling over here. So if we can take the pressure off the whole pressure cooker and it goes, take the lid off, now we can pull the vegetables out of the pressure cooker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, just got a question come in. So the question was there not meant to be 5 steps to the emotional section? Yes. So the actual steps we should rephrase is actually the questions to write down.
Yeah,
For
5
each
questions.
area,
My bad.
I'll just go over them again. Each area is, what are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
What are you focusing on right now? Write down all the thoughts that are firing through your mind. Then start to describe it like a movie. And then the final part is put that description onto paper.
Yeah, so that's in detail. So it might be you've done it, and then you go back into here and you go, and if I'm with somebody live, I'll say, is there anything else? Because the worst thing here is if we don't, there might be one more thing that moves it to a 10, but you're sort of holding it back. This is you on you. This is you on you coaching. It's like, right, freaking dump the whole lot down. Boom. And you go, is there any more steam in the pressure cooker? No. Now we can get our hand in and we can tell whatever it is. We're going to take out the vegetables that we're pressure cooking, whatever. I'm using an analogy here. Do they even use pressure cookers anymore? I don't know. But
I don't know. Okay, so I want to ask a question to the audience. No, because that makes sense. But I want to ask a question. Give us a thumbs up if that's part 1 made sense, section 1, and then go on to logic 2. So I just want to just check in with them.
Because we'll take questions anyway. But I know with me, I just get excited and carried away trying to unpeel this. So if anyone wants to...
So just give us thumbs up. Does the emotional download part, step 1, make sense? Because then we'll go on to now step 2, which is the logical.
Pressure cooker off.
Perfect. So we're getting thumbs up coming in.
All right. Remember, if I go through it, then we can pick it apart afterwards, and then if anyone wants to dive in. So the next thing is cataloging. So logically catalog. Now this is different, right? Logically catalog. So for each one of those situations that you've dumped everything down on, if you can in the journal, I mean, whether you want to leave a couple of pages after each one, emotional section and logical is entirely up to you. But now put a title saying logical explanation. And there's 4 parts to this. So the first one I wrote down here was, for each area, what is my, so write down factually, notice the emphasis there, Harminder, on factually, what is the factual situation?
Facts. So what's a nice tip for them here?
Well, okay, so yeah,
making it factual.
I'm really angry and pissed off with my husband, and I just feel like crying all the time. My wife. I mean, somebody talked about the relationship here just a minute ago, whatever. Or it could be to do with your finances. I'm just overwhelmed. Everything's going under. I'm gonna go bust in the next week. Whatever it is you feel, right? Now logically, okay. So logically, I have 5 properties, and 2 of those properties, the letting agents told me that the tenants may not be able to pay. The other 3 have not received any information on that at all, or at the other 3, it appears that actually they can pay. I haven't called my mortgage company to find out I can get a mortgage holiday, or maybe that you've spoken to one but you're not sure about the others. So in other words, sometimes we look at the first situation in that emotional state and we assume the worst for everything. The logic here is actually cataloging it in writing. If it's an emotional thing to do with a relationship, it's come up a couple of times. Okay, so actually, my husband and I are arguing over specifically what? Is it money? Is it the fact that he leaves his socks on the bedroom floor, and now it's got to a point where it's like a massive pair of socks in your mind? I know it sounds silly, but little things can tip the balance. We're getting fine. We're getting fine generally. We eat, we talk, we're okay, but we argue when it comes to discussing this part of our life. So be specific. Otherwise, people go, "Oh, my wife's shit, my husband's this." They're always too general. We've got to move away from that now, because if it's to do with another person or a situation, we've got to be factual about it. Because putting the facts in place, now we've got something to deal with. The emotions, we're wrestling with jelly.
So I like this word because this ties back to the thing that is happening every single day during this situation that we're in, which is the Prime Minister announces factually what is going to happen. What's the latest that's going to happen for the next 24 to 48 hours. And then what we do as people is we attach our emotion to this and start to put that out there.
Yeah.
And just another way to think about it and try to keep it on, just allow people then to start to separate the facts of the scenario to the feeling of the scenario.
So when I can see Tracy Carter online, good to see you, Trace. When we Trace will remember this. Some of those you came through Turning Point, and you came through Turning Point. Last one we did.
So here's a really good question, Ro, is would we not be specific when we describe our feelings in step 1?
Yeah, okay. So let me come back to that
yeah.
in a second, right? So just very quickly, so I've got, because somebody wrote down about, so not the story of what happened, correct? So we used to have a thing in Turning Point when people turn up and they were carrying a load of stuff with them for the 3-day training. It was like an interventional seminar for 3 days, as you know, going on to 1, 2 in the morning. It was a lovely time when we used to run these. And what used to happen was people would come and unload. So we did in the first hour of the day, we'd get people to have 2 minutes of just tell the story and unload everything. And all the other person had to do was to say, listen like this. And then when they just dumped everything, they went, thank you for sharing. And that was it. And it was just like dissipated. So people were walking around the room. If you remember this, it was like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Right,
thank you for sharing.
Else.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So what then happened was, if somebody came to stage and they went, this is my situation, the whole audience would say, thank you for sharing. And it gives you a chance to go, yeah, let me just get it out. So when it comes down to feelings, yes, you can be specific about your feelings. As I said, you can be as specific as you want in the emotional part, meaning you're describing how you're feeling. i.e. you're feeling anger, you're feeling bitter, you're feeling really pissed off, you're feeling
frustrated, overwhelmed.
The victim, they would be the detailed descriptive words. But that's the emotional side of it. This is different. We're now actually cataloging. And what I wrote down here is remove any emotional words from the description. That's the second part of it. So as you're doing it, you're going to start to describe, when I'm talking to my husband, we appear to disagree when it comes to the discussion over our credit card debts. Whereas I might have spoken to the lady and she might have said, me and my husband are always arguing about money all the time. Everything to do with money we argue. I'm like, okay, everything. She goes, yeah, everything. Well, absolutely everything. Well, okay, not absolutely everything. Well, okay, specifically, what do you argue about? Well, we argue about money. Well, what specifically do you argue about money? Well, generally it's about credit cards. Okay, so is it about spending credit cards or is it about other parts of credit? No, it's about our credit card debt. Now we've narrowed everything about money down to one thing. And we have to get to that logic, because you can't solve a solution if you're from an emotional place just swamped in the feeling of it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think for the audience, just give us a thumbs up if that makes sense, because now we're differentiating between the emotional description and the facts of what is actually happening in the situation right now.
So remember, this is a diffusing process. So capture it down, separate it, compartmentalize it first. That means that you now can see in your life what's causing you distress or anxiety.
So what if somebody can't do this for themselves? What would you suggest?
Okay, so it's a good question. If somebody can't do it for themselves, be a silent witness. Imagine someone that you know that would do this with you. So ask yourself the question: if I was talking to my mentor, if I was talking to Harminder, Rohan, Tracy, one of the mentors, we saw.
We've got Joe, Helen.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great people online today. A lot of our crew who are speakers as well. Whoever you are, whoever they are, think about somebody outside you. How would they describe your situation? If you told them your situation and asked them to repeat it back to you, Joe might say, I think Joe's on tonight, Joe might say, okay, so what I can understand from your situation, Harminder, is that you've got 12 properties and you said you're drowning, but actually what you're saying is you've only called 2 letting agents, and one of them said the tenants can't pay, the other one said they could pay, but you haven't checked with the other ones. Is that correct? And Harminder says, actually, that's correct.
Oh, yeah, that's actually what's happening.
And from what you told me, the mortgage companies, most of them are actually offering a holiday, but maybe a couple aren't. Yeah, but the ones that aren't, I'm really getting stressed about. Yeah, but okay, but logically, what you're saying is you've got 12 properties, of which 8 are offering a payment holiday and 4 you're not sure about. Yeah, actually, that's true. So you've possibly got 10 that can pay rent and 4 mortgages you're not sure about. Yes. Now we've taken this, oh shit, I'm in trouble, I can't get cash flow, whatever it is, to right now I've got something to work with. At the moment, we're now moving from a messy spaghetti bolognese. We're taking the little pressure cooker. I'm looking inside and I'm saying, right, okay, so there's the peas. Let me take the peas out. There's 4 peas. There's some broccoli in there. No, it's not vegetarian, or a bit of fish in there again.
So somebody said a phrase earlier in the comments, which was untangling the spaghetti.
Yes, exactly.
So
but
I like
in a
that
logical
phrase,
way. Measuring the spaghetti. I thought that was a long piece of spaghetti. There's this big bowl of spaghetti. I thought it was bloody long, that piece. It's tiny. Right. So go back to how would a friend of yours describe it? So write it down as though you were somebody that you knew that had a very logical brain to you. Or worst case scenario, if you've got, and I say worst case, but maybe it's the best case, if you've got someone that you know that you care about, that knows you well enough and is objective, just reach out to them. I'm not going to name names, but I had a really nice conversation with somebody just recently. I was in a car with her and we were driving along and she was sharing a situation. I was able to just reflect back. I was just being a mirror to her. And sometimes that's all you need. You just need somebody to be a mirror. And all they do is they say back to you what you have said, but ask them to describe it in a logical way. And by doing that, it changes the filter of the perception, the meaning, or whatever you want to phrase it with. Okay. Does that make sense so far, Hans?
Yeah, so we've got one question off the back of that. Would we just get the other person to read the logical side of things, i.e. just the facts? And I say yes, they're really just reading the facts back to you.
You don't need them to be in your pile of shit, in your pile of spaghetti, in your emotional turmoil. No, you don't, because again, this is a great point actually. And we've got people like Trace and a lot of those of you have been through with me on some other events that we've done in the past. What would happen if I'd get a lot of people in a room and somebody was having an emotional shift? Is a lot of people would come in, or your friends and family outside before you come to an intervention. We go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And they would get into the pit with you and they would feel your emotional pain. And instead of them nurturing you out of it or giving you a sensible, logical way, you're pulling them into the experience. And of course, then they are actually feeding that pain. So actually, it's a good question, whoever asked that question. No, what we get them to do is just simply mirror back a logical this is what I'm feeling right now. This is the situation I'm in. Okay, so let's break it down. How many areas? That's 3 areas. One is my partner, my relationship, my husband, my wife. The other one is the finances at the moment. The other one is my business, my property portfolio. And this is how I'm feeling about this area. And this is how I'm feeling about this area. And this is how I'm feeling about this. And you just go boom. And it doesn't have to be crying or anger. It could just be you describing it. But you're going and you're just going emotionally. And they simply go, okay, so what you're saying is, when exactly does that happen? And then they may have to extract the logic of that. Or you can self-coach yourself. So what I would say to myself is, well, when does that happen? How is that happening? What's the trigger for that? And what exactly is the point where the anxiety, the pain, the pressure kicks in? It won't be everything. It's nearly always one or two things that are working together. Does that make sense, Hans?
That makes sense. So what's the next part of the logical
right? Okay.
step?
So the next thing is, now having done that and captured all those things on paper, now having breathed, taken the pressure off, we now go, okay, so what are, looking at, so let's go back to this one, right, with the mortgages. What are the solutions that I can put in place to overcome this? Because now what I've done is I've done this. I've stood up, I've had my glass of water, I've vented off now, I've written it down logically. By the way, water, air, great state changes. So, get up. Don't just sit there having done that and go into the solution part now. What you do is you take it outside. You're allowed one bit of exercise a day. So I will walk 500 miles. I think Caroline,
I've seen that meme flying around, yeah.
Caroline sent me that earlier on. So you go out and you look at it and you go, okay, so in this case, there's 10 mortgage companies I haven't spoken to. So what do I need to do? I need to get the bloody phone number. What are they likely to ask me? They're likely to ask me my account number. Although, to be fair, at the moment, you can go online and you can always self-certify yourself for mortgage payment holidays. So I don't want to get into that. There may have been covered. It may be covered over the coming days ahead. There's a lot of technical stuff I can get into all of you right now about certain things. So one of the things would be to go and approach, in this case, logically, the mortgage company. The other one is the letting agent in this example. If it's a husband-wife conversation or with kids, whatever, if it's a more emotional one, what is the best logical thing to do? If it were me, and I know, and I've had this before, if the kids are around, we're not going to have a sensible conversation. If I get into a high volume discussion with my lovely lady, that does not help when my little one or my 11-year-old, whatever it is, messages me, and she doesn't even have a phone. So I'm just wondering how she got that. So she must have, that came through on, I think, FaceTime. So she's probably got hold of an iPad, which we only have 2, and normally the kids are restricted, but they're having a bit of iPad. They're actually loving it. They're getting a bit of iPad time right now. So she's probably pressed the button there. But whatever it is, we get distractions. So having distractions is not a good idea. So logically, you might say, okay, so I'm going to speak to my husband at 8 p.m. when the kids are asleep. I'm going to let him know in advance, and we will discuss specifically, not everything, but just this subject to the credit cards. And what do I need to have with me I need to have the credit card statements. I need a copy of our bank statements and the phone number for the company. So I'm now putting something logical to take to the table instead of an emotional conversation.
So these are now solution orientated things, right? You're writing down the solutions.
Yeah. So let me give you 4 things, right? So what I typically do is, number 1, who needs to be involved in that process. So now I'm looking at the solution to pulling this bit of spaghetti. Here's my bit of spaghetti. Who needs to be involved with this bit of spaghetti? What needs to be done? Okay, so what needs to be done with this situation? Remember, I've gone from letting off the steam, vented it off, looked at them, compartmentalized them. Now a logical breakdown of the situation, the detail of it. Now here it is, right in front of me. So who needs to be involved, if anybody? May just be me, or it could be somebody else. What specifically needs to be done? What are the actions? So sit with my husband, go through the credit file situation, look at the interest on the card, see if we can call up, get a payment holiday on our credit card, for example. I mean, I'm just giving you one example. Throw more if you want to. If anyone wants to bring them up, we can do. The third one is when. When are you going to do it? Because if we keep moving the when back to sometime in the future, the pressure cooker builds up again. Not putting a when down, Harms, is like the pressure cooker here, and then the lid is off. When allows us to get the steam off and do something. Now put the lid on, and I don't do anything about it. It just builds up again. And then we're getting the same conversation in 3 weeks, 2 weeks time. So we have to have some sort of plan behind that as well. That's the time.
That's where the self-coaching comes in.
Yes. And then, of course, the other thing that most people forget is, what resources do I need? Now, resources can be anything from money, time. You need to win back some time. That's why I came in the office today. I needed 2 or 3 hours. That's when I called you earlier as well to prepare for tonight, because we wanted to make sure that we had some good tools for you. So whatever it is, when. So what are the resources I need? Resources could be a friend, a phone call, someone you just need to reach out to. It could be some extra material. Our school
could be that objective person, that third person to come and actually write down the factual information that you've got in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to somebody the other day, and they were like really anxious about homeschooling the kids and what they're going to do. And I said, well, look, the school's likely to have a plan, but I don't know if they've got a plan. I said, okay, well, look, what do you think you could do? And she said, well, I mean, nobody's told me anything. I said, okay, yeah, but that's you being a victim. You're waiting for something to happen to you. What could you do? And she said, well, maybe I should just call the school. I said, well, calling the school might not help. Why don't you communicate directly with the teacher? And it sounds obvious, but her head was just exploding with all this stuff. Her husband's just lost his job because of coronavirus. So she's dealing with all that. And all she could think about is she's got the pain of the loss of her husband's job, and she's associating that pain with a conversation with me about school, 2 different things. Yeah. And she didn't see the wood from the trees. So,
and that goes back to step 1. That goes back to step 1. Yeah, perfect.
I mean, all I did in that moment was just literally did the whole process in about 2 minutes or something with it, which it can be done quickly as well. So who needs to be involved, if anybody, apart from you? What needs to be done? Very important. Specifically, steps. When does it need to be done? Get some time frame behind it. And then, are there any other resources to make that happen quicker, to alleviate the pressure? Can you leverage yourself? Right, I'm going to pause for a minute because I'm speaking fast.
Okay, that makes sense. So what I'll do a quick summary of this. So now we're on step 2, which is the logical cataloging, or the logical explanation, that side of what is going on. And here we're now separating the emotion. We're extracting the emotion from it and writing down factually everything that's happening in this situation right now. So just remove any emotion from this. If you're struggling to do that by yourself, try and get a trusted advisor, or a friend, or ask third-party questions, the silent witness style, and start to self-reflect there. And now we're going to shift to solution-orientated things.
Yes, the last thing is this. Can you see that? Can you see that?
Priority, yeah, see that.
Yeah, okay, so priority.
Yeah.
So of these different areas, the emotional areas, now move down into logical groupings with specific things. This is not a quick process. This could take you an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. Just even if you did 1 area a day, that's a pressure relief. But then we've got to decide what comes first. So can you take that group, and you might say, but you don't understand, Ro, everything's frigging important. I understand that. In which case, we need to work out what you're going to do in each area first, which we're going to come to in a minute. But can you put a priority? If it's possible, get them in a sequence.
Yeah, maybe score them first. Score them, and
yeah, I mean, look, 1 being not priority, 10 being absolute priority. If you want to do it that way, for each of those grouped areas, not for each of the activities, each of the areas, Harms. So business, family, relationship, I don't know, kids, finances, whatever. Which of these has the highest priority? And bearing in mind, we're coming to the end of a month. Here's a clue for everybody. If you've got mortgages set up, whether it's a personal mortgage, or again, I can't give you financial advice, but just think logically on this. This was a priority for me today. We have a lot of our property portfolio mortgages that are triggered for the start of the month. Okay, so that's how we got them set up. So we rearranged our portfolio over the years in such a way that majority of everything goes out at the beginning, not long after the rent comes in. So we've triggered it that way. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I'm conscious that some of these lenders might need a little bit of time if they're going to trigger a holiday if we need it. So it's just about planning. So it might be you go, yeah, I mean, there's something to do with the school homework, but right now I need to spend the first part of the morning, priority, phoning on the logical side, the mortgage companies. I can email the school, speak to one of the parents. I can send them WhatsApp message. That's another mechanism of communication to one of the parents to say, could you send me the outline of the homework for tomorrow? But let's stay focused on, because if you miss the deadline with the bank, you might not get the mortgage holiday for the following month if you need it.
April,
right?
exactly.
So again, it's just taking the pressure off.
So, okay, that's step 2. Give us a thumbs up if that makes sense. So we've done emotional step. Now we've done a logical step. Give us a thumbs up in the comments if that makes sense. And now we're going to move on to the final step, step 3, which is actions you can take. And then we've
I've
got...
just seen somebody said, I'm procrastinating because I don't have a plan. Fantastic. Well, this is the way to do it. Excellent. So step 3, and obviously this is a typical Ro thing here. I said I was going to do this in half an hour. It's taking me longer, but hopefully there's value in it. So
this was supposed to be half an hour. Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. Some of you are like, yeah, don't worry. Surprise, surprise, Ro. He talks a lot. Right. So step 3 is actions. Okay. So I've got 4 things here for those of you, for the analysts, 4 things. So number 1 is for each of the areas that we just talked about, whichever they are. We've moved emotion to the top and off to the side now, remember? We've got a logical now, and now we've got a breakdown into each of these areas. For each of the areas, what is your first step? Start with that. What is it? Is it, right, first step in the morning, call the mortgage company. Or first step, when I get back from work, if you're still at work, I'm going to tell my husband we're going to have a chat tomorrow about credit files or credit cards or whatever. Or if it's a school issue, whatever it is, or if it's an emotional issue, relation, whatever. Whatever the action is, write it down. There has to be something. Yeah, there has to be one thing that you know you're going to do. And don't necessarily make it the easiest. Some people have the approach to do the toughest thing. Everyone's got a different view on this. If you ask me what's my view on it, I would typically take on the toughest thing to do first.
Yeah.
Because if I can get through the toughest thing, the easier stuff seems even easier. The trouble with procrastination, somebody just wrote that there, is we tend to do the things that we feel most comfortable with, and the uncomfortable things then build up in the pressure cooker. So my view, go for the toughest things first. That would be, if I was coaching you, I'd be like, let's go for the toughest thing first. Right, so that's number 1. Is that clear, Hans?
Number 1. Yeah, right, so actions
2.
We can take, number 1, yeah.
So number 2 in this process is remember, we've listed these out and we've got a sequence now, ideally, to this. Number 2 is, who do you need to speak to? Because my personal approach to this is, if you're feeling overwhelmed right now with all this stuff, are there any of these things here? And remember, these are all different areas. Are there any of these things where I've got some actions where I've got my logical sequence, where I can pass on some of that to somebody else to do? Maybe 3 of those 5, yes. Great. So, yeah, Simon can do that. Sarah can do this. My good friend Harms can help me with that. Brilliant. These 2, I own these. I'm going to have to do these. And I'm going to pick something tough there to get on with. Yeah. So this is now learning to leverage, not just to leverage money and leverage time, but we're leveraging people around us.
So here's a question, Ro. What if that speaking to somebody involves an uncomfortable conversation? Because I think a lot of people are going to have some uncomfortable conversation with their partner, their children, their letting agent, the banks, the mortgage lender, whoever that is. How can we just give them a couple of tips there?
Right. So write down what you want to get across in that message, because all right, I'm going to do this very difficult. I'm going to draw this very quickly. Right, here we go. So we've got 3 steps to the process. Right, 3 steps, yeah? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
The difficulty here, if you speak to somebody in an emotional state, it just becomes an explosive conversation. You might remember at the very last turning point that we did 3 years ago, we had the couple on stage that were basically living apart. Do you remember that? The last couple of hours.
Correct.
And they wouldn't even speak to each other. Do you remember? They're in such a heightened emotional state that they were actually sitting in different parts of the seminar. So when I
Yeah.
brought them onto stage, if you notice what happened is I moved them down through this similar process so we could get them to a point where we started to talk about solutions. Now that didn't take that long, and yet for months, if not longer than that, they've been apart from each other. So we can't have a conversation, an uncomfortable conversation, when we're in that space, which is why we depressurize. We come to here, and now what we've got in stage 3 is a logical set of things that we need to have as a conversation. We remove any emotion. So we don't, any of that does not come in to that conversation there. Am I making sense here with this diagram?
That makes sense. Otherwise, the first interaction is going to be even more uncomfortable because it's a clash. It's going to, yeah.
And look, that's okay. Sometimes that's needed. But if it turns out that that is an emotional cycle where you go, I'm emotional, you have an argument, and the argument is about your pain, and you feel like a victim, and then you go back into an emotional state and have the same conversation, you're not going to break out that cycle. So the difficulty with the emotional continuously is we always end up being a victim. Whereas if we can remove ourselves and be objective in that moment for that conversation to at least try and progress something forward, we move into a slightly different environment. The conversation changes shape, it changes form, it has more clarity. So I'm not going to go into, I mean, look, if you go
I've sidetracked you, so let's go back to step 3 now.
So can I do a quick, can I talk about CWI Instagram, or am I not allowed to do that here?
CWI Instagram.
So on I've got a bunch of 1-minute videos, which I did about a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, so
if you want to go and have a look.
Yeah. So follow Ro on @drro.tv on Instagram, and just scroll down. There's some 1-minute videos. And which one are you referring to specifically?
Okay. So the first 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 components of the communication system. Just go watch those short videos. That should give you enough clues there. So what you want to do is, when you're talking to that person, if it's an uncomfortable conversation, follow that sequence. Essentially, what you'll see me describe is be clear on what the outcome is. And the outcome is driven by part 2, which is the logic. If it's a tough question to have with somebody, sequence out what you want to get from that conversation. And that does not involve you having a go at them about the emotional side. Second thing is getting 2 or 3 clear messages, and that's it. Don't confuse it. Don't go, and then this, and then that, and then this, and then that, and then this. Because it's just like they're gonna push back.
Yeah. Push back or shut down.
Or shut down. Or
shut down.
Very good. Yeah. And it'll
be done. Not listening.
Could be an emotional shutdown. Could be an angry shutdown. So this goes back to the logic of what we just done previously, which is cover the key things with them. So if you do need to have a conversation, make sure that conversation is objective. Very important. And if you're not in the right emotional state, don't have it. Reset it. Have it at a different time. Just don't go there if you're in a poor emotional state. That includes letting agents, and it includes speaking to mortgage brokers, etc. Because if you're angry, frustrated, and you have it out with them, trust me, mortgage brokers, letting agents, builders, they're all feeling it massively at the moment.
Yeah. So this goes back to
anyone else in the profession, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even solicitors less so than mortgage brokers. Letting agents must be getting it from both ends, both the tenants and the. So we've got to have some empathy as well when we're dealing with people.
Exactly. One of the things was, would we be able to write this 3-step process up?
Okay. I've got it. I mean, I've got it typed up from earlier.
We can arrange it. We shall arrange
Can I leave that with you to sort that out, Holmes?
He's going to leave that with me to sort that out.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. Daughter, daddy, when are you coming back?
All right, because you want to spend time with...
Yeah. Let me give that to Holmes. No children yet. Here you go.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that one on. No kids yet. Okay,
right.
So step 3.
Step 3 is...
Step 3.
Yeah.
So let's do step 1 again. Because we've gone
so write down for each of area, what's your first action? What's the first thing you need to do?
Right, and then number 2 is who do you need to speak to?
So you're looking at this going, right, looking around me, who actually needs to be involved in this? So maybe list them out. And are there any people you need to have a conversation with? Now narrow it down. Who are the key people? So number 3 is, who are the key people? There might be a bunch of people involved, possibly, maybe nobody, it could be just you. But who are the key people that you're going to have to lean on? Because this is about helping you relieve the pressure. You cannot take all this on your own. You won't be able to. It's an immense pressure on most people right now. So who can you help to leverage that pressure from you specifically? Get their details down, write it down. And then I'm going to...
And for some of us, that's going to be the government in this scenario. So,
that's true.
Yeah, and that's going to be something we have to factor in here.
So what I would say is, at this point here, there's several ways we can go. Now, I'm going to add another stage in here just quickly because of some of the questions that are coming in. And I don't want to get into it too much, Hans, because this is almost like time management, time planning separately. But you're going to have to create mini projects for each of these areas. I think we might need to tackle this on another call, actually.
Okay, I think let's tackle that. I'll speak to Jan.
I was about to go into it and do about the project process.
Yeah, so we've done that in part of the podcast, and it can take quite a while. So I think let's chat to Jan and do something a bit later again.
Okay, so but can I just at least praise it here?
Yes.
Okay, so having got these lists here, what's your first step? That's a pressure relief. Got some action. Who are the general people I need to have around me? Make some phone calls. Who's with you? Who's not? Because some people won't be. I had conversations just this last week about which tradesmen are still in and which ones have sort of decided not to do this anymore, because there's a lot of grey area for tradesmen. Can they or can't they? That was one thing that wasn't really covered last night in the announcement. So that conversation took place today. I did exactly this process. I rang around. Then what I did is I narrowed it down to 3 people I know that are my key people at the moment, in order to hopefully help us get over the line with our home. So we literally, I've got whatever it is till next Tuesday. So I'm seeing who are the key people that potentially can still help me with that process to get us over the line, if we can get over the line or not.
And that's why your setting looks like that. So if people are wondering why I've got a nice bookshelf, because I've successfully moved. Ro is in that process.
This is my office, which is currently a storage room because we're in transition. So apologise if it looks like a bit of a dumping ground. So I'm going to give you a 4th and then a 5th. It was originally 4th. I'm going to give you the 5th because the questions that are coming in, and that is. Try and work out, and I don't like to always use the word try because I need to give you a structure. Let me rephrase it. Work out as best you can the sequence beyond step 1. So looking at each of these logical areas, what would be the natural sequence? I don't want to get into the time management process because we'll be here another hour and a half. So for now, simply go, right, there's all these things. Could be 5 things, 6 things, 10 things, whatever it is. What's the logical sequence to that? Remember, there's no emotion now. We've gone from like... to right, well, there's still 10 things here to do, there's still 4 things here to do, there's still 7 things there to do. I know what my number 1 is. I know that's the people that's going to be involved. What's the natural order of that sequence? And looking down that sequence, and here's the key thing, looking down that sequence, put a name next to any of those actions that you can pass to somebody else. Tonight's 3-step process, Harminder. But as long as the person's prepared to do it, would you do it?
But like that, yes, 100%, 100%. We've peaked at 170 people, so of course, 100%.
You can't say no to that. Right. Then the last part of this is take a deep breath, and because here's what can happen if you don't take a deep breath. And you look at those lists, I'll just do them here for you. And look at those lists, you're going to go, oh shit! Back to there. Oh my God,
yeah.
I'm going to deal with all that stuff. And we're going to go in a cycle. So we've got to take a deep breath and we've got to go, okay, there is certain things here that I don't need to stress about right now. Certain things that I know I can pass on, and there's certain things that are absolutely priority. And that's kind of taking me into the time thing again. But
so can we do a reset? So as we write them down, is there a way we can reset and come back to that list?
Take a walk, go out, break your state, go for a run, whatever it is. I mean, for me, it's about shifting your physiology, just getting up, go do something. A great way to do it is to end the process the way you started it. But now we're not doing a visualization like this and going. Now we're going, oh, good, very good. So now we're taking a deep breath and we're going, okay, now I've got my lists here. Yeah, I can see that list, I can see that list. And I've replaced that emotional bowl of spaghetti with actually things that I can sensibly see that I need to do. That doesn't take away some of the pressure. It doesn't mean to say everything's going to go away. The reality is the situation is the situation. But now we're starting to see an order to it. And with order comes a conscious process. And that's what wasn't happening before. It wasn't so conscious. Yeah, so, and then I think try and get away from any negative noise and don't allow other people to come into this world. So this is your world. And only allow, go back to the circle, only allow people into here that you have worked out from the steps we just talked about. Who are the key people that come into that space that you can trust to serve you in there? Otherwise, filter everything else. And I think I'm going to stop there because I could keep going for another couple of hours on this and break it even more. And I apologise if I've taken a lot longer than you thought, Harms, but I'm hoping with the questions that came in, we can at least maybe elaborate if anybody wants to.
Well, actually, does
that help?
I've loved that. So that's a process I've used. And for those who are wondering, does that actually happen live? Let me just see if I can flip this around. So that's us downloading there. Can you see that, Ro? You're not supposed to see what's written on it, but that's us having gone through this process that Ro has described, and got it down, because this has hit us all. But I've been lucky, Ro. We've had these conversations. We covered this process in actually a briefer version of the podcast. We spent a lovely hour and a half on this podcast, which is phenomenal. So some of the questions have actually been answered. But what I would say is the best approach is, because now we're running at 8:30, I would put it to the audience now. I know we've thrown a few questions down, and I haven't logged them. Maybe me and Ro can cover them another time on a separate occasion. But what I'd say is, off the back of this process, are there some burning questions that you feel were unanswered by those 3 steps? So
whilst you're doing that, just so very quickly, if anyone says, well, how do we group things? I use something called Things, and I have done for many, many years. So without going into detail, Things allows you to create areas of your life and then projects within those areas. And it's, for me, been a great tool for organizing different parts of my life on a personal front. So what it does, it allows you to create life areas, and then, or business areas. And then within that, you can create projects. And within the projects, you can have sub-projects as well, which I cover more when I'm talking about time management. But what's nice is, if you're concerned about how to do it, you can capture it on a computer or on your phone, rather than doing it on paper. It allows you to have something with you when you're moving around as well. So that certainly worked for me. And I'm going through that process at the moment. You've got it on your board there. I'm redesigning my current world, because there's a lot of changes that are happening. So projects that I had on, what I was working on, I've moved them to the side now, because other stuff become more priority at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's nice, an opener for just a brief 2 minutes on that is, if we are in this place now where, look, we had property aspirations. Some of us have felt like our property business has come to a complete halt. And I'm trying to pick up some words that have come from this. Property business come to a complete stop. We've gone from these amazing yes meetings where we're meeting as a community now, and now we're suddenly isolated. And we just recently did a talk at yes meeting. Now, when we're isolated, we're not getting the same positive vibe, the positive energy that we would typically get from the trainings, from the mentorship, from the yes meeting, all of these amazing things. So how do we then handle that scenario? And hopefully that question made sense.
Yeah. Somebody also asked, what's the product? It's called Things. Somebody's already typed it up.
It's called Things. And yeah. I use something which is, again, it's a free tool. It's called weekplan.net. So right. Week, as in your week, WEEK, weekplan.net. It's a free tool. It allows you to do the similar things. So 2 different versions there.
I mean, I saw somebody wrote about seeing things not worse than they are. It's a very good point. You may have heard me talk about this on some of my free videos I've done online. And this is a powerful process when you're trying to capture what you're feeling. You write down it as it is, but you don't describe it worse than it is. So it has to be as it is, not worse than it is. And that's the differentiating factor between someone that goes into a victim state where everything is magnified, blown up, expanded, and then is coming onto them. So they often see it worse than it is, as opposed to as it is. So that second stage, the logical stage, is describing it as it is factually, because it's only with the facts can we actually do something there. We can only operate, we can only function, we can only find solutions to facts. Very difficult to do it to some emotionally disjointed feeling that I'm getting, linked to somebody else.
Love that. So what if you are coming across a constant negative person or somebody who's very disruptive, and they immediately just trigger from taking you to a logical state which you are in back to step 1, which is the emotional state? One of the questions came in there.
So the question is, what if I'm around somebody like that?
Yeah, what if you're around somebody that immediately takes you from the logical state again, instantly back into emotional state? They're a difficult person.
Yeah, so I've got a really good divorce lawyer. I can put the number on here. I'm joking. I don't know who it is. It could be brother, sister, uncle, auntie. It could be friend, partner that you sleep with, whatever. I think that's a tricky question, because now we're dealing with 2 separate worlds. So I'm going to go, I like my diagrams, Hans. So yeah, what we're dealing with is two worlds colliding now. So I'm going to draw this. So the Y stands for you and the T is them. Right, can you see that?
Yep, can see that.
Right, so here we go. So here's you and there's them. And they've got all their values and their world is now magnifying and it's coming across into your world. So you're trying to communicate your perception of things here. But unfortunately, the challenge you've got is that they're coming to the table with a negative filter. And so they can literally bring their sphere of influence onto yours. I'm assuming that's maybe what the question's relating to. That is a tricky one. I don't know what the relationship is. I don't know if it's a friend that you've chosen to have as a friend or if it's actually a partner. If it were a friend, then I would be very, very honest with them and say, absolutely respect your opinion, but it's not serving me right now. I'm trying to get my head into the right place, deal with a lot of things on a personal level. And you having this conversation with me is not helping it. So I'm happy to talk about X, Y, and Z. I just don't want to talk to you about A, B, and C. And you have to filter. And when I wrote about this in the Turning Point book, I was quite specific about this and saying, actually, sometimes you need to separate from those relationships. Now, and I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm saying you have to decide if that person's serving you or not. And only you can make that decision. I can't. And I've had that. I've had to do that myself over the years. I think you have as well from conversations.
Yeah, and I think you can ask that same thing, keeping it relevant to the COVID-19 challenge at the moment, which is if you see news and media and all these things that are getting passed around, WhatsApp messages and Facebook groups, etc., you can say the same phrase towards that as well. In your mind, this piece of information or this piece of news or this piece of media is not serving me right now. It's going to cause a negative reaction, take me from a logical state which I'm processing and firefighting, or got things down on paper which I'm working through, back to an emotional state. I think we can also process that and use that tool, Ro, and attach it to the constant media that we're also feeding at the moment as well.
Yeah, and I want to keep on the subject. Somebody just said there, we need these boys in Scotland. I don't know if that's for the Yes group. We are down to go up to Scotland actually for the Yes events.
So for those listening, we had a tour planned off the country Yes events. We hit Richmond and then we went into lockdown. So it was like oh, okay.
I saw a couple of messages there. Look, that is the plan, and we'll get out.
We're excited for that as well.
But let's come back to, so this is such an important question, whoever asked it, and I'm getting goosebumps to whoever asked the question, because look, this is singly one of the biggest challenges all of you face, is some of the closest, I'm coming right up close to the screen here, some of the closest people to you may have a genuinely screwed up, emotionally turmoiled, negatively driven, whatever you want to call it, because I know I've been there with people around me in the past, mindset. It doesn't mean you don't care about them. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you don't have a sense of you want to help them. But they may see the world differently. They haven't invested 10, 20, 25, 30K in their education like you've done. They haven't read books. They're not coming onto seminars and webinars like this. They're at home listening to stuff like this that's on their phones, and they fucking believe it, and they cannot and will not see your world. And no matter what you try and do, and I've been through this even with my own family, who I love dearly, tried to convert them into my way of thinking. You can't change everybody. And Wayne Dyer said this years ago, and it really shifted my understanding as a speaker. I used to go out, and even Harminder, you didn't see me when I was like this, but my first 5-10 years as a speaker, this is going back when I was in my early 20s, all I wanted to do was please everybody. Everything I did, I had to please people, please people, please people. I wouldn't swear. Everything has to be done perfectly. Everything I did was try and help everybody else. I didn't want to upset anybody. And I remember reading a lot of Wayne Dyer's material, and sadly he's passed away now. And he said, if you stand in front of 1,000 people, you cannot get everybody to like you. You cannot convince everybody of what you're saying is exactly right for them. And it's not your responsibility to convert them over to your way of thinking. You just have to be authentic and be yourself. Some people are going to love you, and that's their fault. And some people are going to hate you, and that's their fault as well. Some people are going to disagree with you, and that's their fault. And some people are going to agree with you. He says he used to get fan letters, and mail came in, and he'd say, that's great. And then he'd get other, and he said, that's their responsibility. Thank you. And then other people would write in and say, we freaking hate you. We don't agree with what you said. And I get that occasionally. People get pissed off. They don't like something I said, or I swore too much, or whatever. And I go, that's great. Well, I'm glad they've got an opinion. Everybody has their chance to do that. but we can't try and convert other people over to our way of believing, because that is their path, and that's the challenge you face right now. Is many of you have made a massive shift in coming into this community, and now you're here. Other people may never get to that place. How do you deal with that? You're going to have to live with it. Rob Kiyosaki said years ago, I was backstage with him, and I remember him saying, with great wealth comes great responsibility. Well, with big decisions comes great responsibility as well. So I think love your family, know them for who they are. If your husband or your wife and they really don't understand what you're trying to do, talk to them from a different place. Come from the heart, talk about your values and what's important to you, and try and communicate with them from that space, but also ask them to trust you enough that because they're with you, at least support you in what you're doing. Because the last thing you need is another weight around your ankle to pull you down even further. And hopefully I've talked about that in the right way. I'm not trying to be offensive, because I've been through this myself. Does that make sense, Harminder?
Yeah, I love that, Ro, because even during this time, you know, especially we've got the new students in here or somebody who's been in a year down the line, you know, the initial thing they're going to get is, see, we told you something like this is going to happen. Oh my God, we told you there's going to be a pandemic, going to make your property business really difficult to function. So that's going to be what people are going to be hearing at the moment. So I think if we just wrap up with some words of encouragement, use the tools that we've taught at the moment, which will allow us to process this overwhelm, this change, this uncertainty. Just use this step process. And I can promise you from doing it multiple times, the more you do it, the quicker it becomes. I don't know if you would agree with that, Ro. It almost sometimes becomes instant, right? Just
actually,
process
that's
it.
That's a good point. If you can learn to do it more regularly, it's like the pressure gets taken off you release it on a consistent basis. And that way it doesn't build up. That's not to say it's not going to build up. It happens to all of us. I had a conversation like this morning over some other areas of the business, but I literally just catalogued it down. I got onto things, I wrote it up, and I was just like, okay, I even got a spreadsheet out, and I quickly analysed some numbers, and I went, okay, yeah, I thought it was that, but actually it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Actually, if I do that, and that, I can switch this part of it around. So everyone's going through it. Don't assume that because we're all here as teachers, you know, please do not put any of us on a pedestal. I know there's a lot of you watching today, and you know, thank you for coming in and being prepared to learn. I'm sure if you're listening to Barry, his lovely wife Jeanette, all the mentors that come on and you hear them speak, Mark as well, we're all human beings. We've been through this, and please don't put us any elevated state. We just have a more experience. We've been through more battles. We've dealt with more challenges, and that's why we're here to serve you, because somebody did it for us. I still remember the very first time Mark Dalton wanted to speak, and he came in as a guest. And those of you're asking the question, but he came in as a testimonial speaker in 2003, I think it was, and I was speaking on a basic. I was the first student ever to become a speaker, and I was up there, and it was amazing. And Mark came in, and I said to Mark, "You know what I mean? Amazing speakers, like." Really, mate? Do you think so? I said, yeah, come do some speaking. And he was hungry, and he went through all the ups and downs of being a speaker. Look at today. I mean, what they've done with creative finance is unbelievable. There's no one else in the country that's done what he and Lindsay have done. So we've all been through it, and we want to serve. So just understand that we've just simply been through a few more knocks and bruises than everybody else.
I love that, Ro.
We're not perfect, and we certainly have our flaws, and we certainly have our challenges.
Yeah,
we're in the same battle, just in maybe in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the final summary statement would be, we are all in this together. And I think that's why a whole bunch of us are jumping on these lives every night to share that message and say that we are in this together. And we're trying to feed back and give as much as we can and listen to the questions, because these questions will also open up the door to more answers and more solutions. So, Ro, I'm going to wrap up and I'm going to announce the next couple of speakers over the next nights. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Look, if we want to do something on time management, you just reach out to me. I'll find another slot on an evening. This is kind of when the kids go to bed, which is probably why my little one was messaging. But I actually think time management is quite an important thing in this process. And if enough people say yes, I'm happy to talk into that space. We have done a podcast on it, but I think we can tackle slightly differently and maybe take some questions as well.
Yeah, I think so. So I think what we can do is, if you would like us to do next week, and I'll check in with Jan if this is okay, for us to do something on time management, just give us a thumbs up. And off the back of that, again, massive thank you for listening to us today. And hopefully this process has been for value. And I've been given a note. So the speaker coming up, and we've got some phenomenal people. And you'll know all these people as well. Tomorrow we have Neil Stewart and Heather Mortimer, the social housing masters. And then the day after that, I don't know what day we're on at the moment, is going to be Caroline and Nick Claydon. So
Fantastic.
phenomenal people as well, phenomenal investors. And that's who we're going to have. So look forward to that.
Evenings. Yeah. I'll communicate with Caroline today. You've got what a great lineup.
Amazing lineup. So we've and no doubt those 4 people we've said have had their knocks, their challenges, their troubled times, and they're here to share some of their experiences and value with you as well and answer your question. So Ro, we've got a load of thumbs up for time management. So I think Jan will be persuaded now. She can't say no now. So Ro, I'll chat to you.
Why don't we agree this? Why don't we put some notes together for it, and then we can hand those out as well at the end of that next one.
Okay, we'll prepare that, and I will prepare the 3-step process. I'll pop it in this group for simplicity, and we'll pin it to the top. So you just copy and paste that into your notepad and just start to work on the process. So I think Ro,
from I have to work out a day because I may be homeless next week. I don't know. I mean, no.
Ro's gonna have to work through his process.
That's my list over there. Yeah. Okay.
It's in the compartment. Okay, I shouldn't laugh at that. Okay, so
no, you shouldn't laugh at that.
I shouldn't laugh at that. I know.
We can't. We will isolate. I'll be isolating in a bloody van or something.
Oh goodness. Okay, so that's myself and Ro signing off. Thank you for tonight.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.